Welcome to NCIX Tech Tips. Today's episode is about the Sapphire HD 7770 GHz edition with their VaporX vapor chamber technology cooler. I was counting on the terrible AI in Battlefield 3 to have those guys not notice me while I stood here and did my video intro, but since that didn't happen for me, we are going to go ahead with the video. So we're going to be comparing this card head-to-head against its closest competitor price-wise, the GTX 550 Ti from NVIDIA, and we're going to let you guys know how it compares in terms of cooling, in terms of, well, cooling is the same as temperatures, and in terms of 3D performance against what is essentially now a last-generation card from the competition. Now we're still in the middle of running some of our benchmarks. Right now I'm not doing a performance run through, but I'm showing you guys what Crysis 2 looks like on very high settings, running pretty darn smoothly. You can see we're not really dipping below around 40 FPS, and this is at 1080p on the 7770 GHz edition. Remember, GHz edition means the core is clocked at least 1 GHz, which is the same as gigahertz, by the way. I do want to take a quick look at our test platform before we go any further. So we have a Gigabyte X79A UD7 motherboard. This is a very high-end overclocking gaming motherboard. We've got 16 gigs of Kingston HyperX memory. We've got a 3930K 6-core processor overclocked to 4.4 gigahertz, or gigahertz, whichever you prefer. We've also got a ZX 1250 watt power supply, a Mushkin Chronos Deluxe SSD for our boot drive, and Steam and all the games, as usual, are running off of an external Seagate GoFlex. And that pretty much covers it. So, I mean, hey, you guys can stick around here and find out with us exactly what kind of temperatures we experience under gaming load with the 7770 GHz edition VaporX. So remember, the VaporX has a vapor chamber cooler and heat pipes and dual fans in order to maintain temperatures, I actually don't know yet, of, wow, less than 60 degrees under a gaming load, so 59 degrees in video games. Now let's take a close-up look at the card. So I mentioned that it was going up against what was essentially a last-generation competitor. The 550 Ti and the 7770 are priced very similar, but the 550 Ti is a bit of an older card, using a bigger, that is to say, less refined manufacturing process. So the 7770, one of the reasons it runs so cool, and you're going to see the results of that in a moment, and performs so well is it's using the 28 nanometer manufacturing process, just like the higher end cards like the 7970 and the 7870. So this is the same sort of generation of products, but it's just a little bit lower end so that it can fill a different price point. Now this is a non-reference card. It's still using everything that AMD intends for this card, so that is the 28 nanometer GPU, 1 gig of GDDR5 memory, PCI Express 3.0 interface, crossfire support, but it means that Sapphire can do a few things on their own. So they've built in an awesome cooler. This is their VaporX cooler using dual fans, a vapor chamber, and 2 heat pipes in order to spread as much heat away from the GPU as possible. And you can see that we do get the results temperature-wise, and it also runs significantly quieter than the competition. Because this is a mainstream card, it does only have a single PCI Express 6-pin power connector, so you'll be able to power it with pretty much whatever power supply you want. And when it comes to outputs, we've got iFinity 2.0, which means up to 4 displays using DVI, DVI, and DisplayPort, although to run 4 displays you'd need some kind of a daisy chain configuration with the DisplayPort. So in practical use, you're going to want to run no more than about 3 displays off of the 7770 GHz edition. So I think the basic conclusion is that if you don't have a pressing desire for CUDA or PhysX, which are NVIDIA exclusive technologies, if you're a gamer, the 7770 looks like the way to go. So I'm going to show you guys in real time one graph, and then in real time how I make my graphs, which actually people have asked me about. So Crysis 2, average FPS, 1080p, very high presets. The VaporX just destroys the 550 Ti. It's about a 20% performance difference, which is very tangible and very noticeable. It is also a 20% performance difference in the minimum FPS as well, which again, when it's dipping down below a certain threshold, you really feel every frame per second a lot more than you would notice 90 FPS versus 100 FPS, for example. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select data, and I'm going to take this data and, oh, I need the control button, and the Skyrim data, bam! Then I change my header to, oh, I don't have a keyboard. See, I went to type and I had no keyboard. You guys get the point. Skyrim. Okay, whatever. Skyrim. Okay. And for Skyrim, we are actually using Ultra presets, and we got data that was very much closer. However, when we factor in, FPS more is better, so 42.6 versus 40.3, when we factor in the temperature difference, so we're going to select data, take this one, and this one, we can also see that the 7770 runs 10% cooler than the GTX 550 Ti on top of being significantly quieter. So thank you for checking out our, I guess this is the first time we've covered a 7770 on this show, but specifically the Sapphire 7770 Vapor X, and don't forget to subscribe to NCIX Tech Tips.